So I had an idea. Okay, hear me out. It's gonna be very different. I know that on this channel I said that I like to talk about fitness and beauty, and while I plan to continue that, there's something new that I want to add, a new series rather. I've been wanting to introduce something just a little bit more to this channel. Makeup and fitness is so vast, and especially on YouTube, it's
very, very saturated.
I just wanted to bring something to this channel that was a little bit more unique, something that can unite us and bring us just a little bit closer. And so I've been pondering this for quite some time now, asking myself, what do I love just as much as makeup, if not more? And then it dawned on me, the TV show Friends. And so the idea of Makeup with Friends was born. And so what I plan to do, at least at this point, I guess we'll see how this goes over, what you think of it, but I plan to retell every episode of Friends with you and share all of my opinions and thoughts and observations, as well as fun facts and maybe things you didn't know, and just all of the great things, all the great details that makes Friends the iconic show that it has become today. And I hope that in doing this, that it brings you just those feel-good feels, the same way watching each episode of Friends does. For me, Friends is one of those shows that no matter how many times I've seen every single episode, it never gets old. I laugh at all the same moments. I can recite pretty much line for line, episode by episode. And you know, to be honest, it's played such a big role throughout my life, as maybe ridiculous as that may sound. Growing up, my mom loved this TV show Friends, and that's how I started watching it, was because of her. And it just kind of became the show that we would watch when it was still on, you know, before the series ended. We would tune in whatever night it aired. I don't remember if it was, you know, Thursday nights, Friday nights, whatever, but we would tune in and watch the new episode live and eat pizza together. It was just, you know, kind of our way of bonding. And then growing up, once I owned the DVDs, I would replay the DVDs
over and over and over again.
Just, you know, even it running in the background just gave me the sense of comfort and happiness that I just can't explain. And I'm sure that if you are a Friends watcher, you could probably relate to that same feeling. And so I hope that in doing this series, I can at least relay a little piece of that feeling to you, and we can experience it together as we recount each episode together. I had been planning this for a couple of weeks now and researching this first episode and, you know, thinking this all through. And I have to tell you, now that I'm here face to face with a camera, I was so nervous to film this because there's so much pressure to do this iconic show justice. And I hope that I'm able to do well. I hope that I'm able to recall details and facts accurately. And I hope that if I'm not, that you help me out and leave me comments below and help remind me, and that we can just create a community of friends-obsessed friendship, and that this is just all in all a great time together. Of course, this was inspired by many other YouTubers who are doing makeup-inspired series, like Bailey Sarian's Makeup and Murder, also Jamie French's Makeup and Movies, Robert Welch's Makeup and Ghost Stories. I subscribe to all three of them and tune into all of their makeup series episodes, so this is just my way of taking part in that. I, of course, won't be talking about what makeup I'm using during this, but I will link everything below if you're interested in any of the products that I'll be using. All that being said, I hope that if this is of interest to you, that you hit that subscribe button so you can come back for episode 2, 3, 4, and so forth. I look forward to reading your comments, your thoughts, your opinions below. Let's get into season 1, episode 1, the one with the pilot. All right, so Friends. According to the original pitch created by Marta Kaufman and David Crane, it's about sex, love, relationships, careers, a time in our life when everything's possible. And it's about friendship, because when you're single in the city, your friends are your family. This pitch was titled Insomnia Cafe, which was the name of the show David and Marta wanted in the beginning. And in this pitch, Ross and Rachel were not the main relation. Monica and Joey were, which is really weird. Once NBC bought the pilot, the name of the show changed to Friends Like Us, and then it became Across the Hall. Then, weirdly, my least favorite one, 6 of 1. But by the time the show aired on September 22nd of 1994, NBC had shortened the name to just Friends. Thank goodness, right? How weird would it be if the iconic show Friends was named 6 of 1? I don't know that I would pack the same punch. The show is typically shot in front of a live studio audience of about 300 people. Each episode would take about 6 hours to film, and the guest audience would be offered pizza and freebies. I wonder what it took to be part of that live studio audience. How cool would that have been? If you had the opportunity to be in the audience, which episode would you want to be part of in filming? Let me know down below. As I said, the show premiered on September 22nd of 1994. I was 5 years old at the time. And the show was watched by approximately 22 million people.
Ooh.
The pilot episode is the only episode that features the full fountain scene at the beginning, the beginning credits. And from what I read, it sounds like that scene was filmed not actually in New York. It was in a Warner Brothers studio, made to look like New York City, of course. And they shot it at 4 in the morning, and it was raining. And from what I gather, no one was having the best of time, but they rallied together and made the most of it and produced an amazing, iconic intro. I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you have seen the show Friends and you are familiar with the characters, but just in case you are new to the show, there are 6 main characters. We have Monica, who is played by Courtney Cox. We have Rachel, who is played by Jennifer Aniston. We have Phoebe, who is played by Lisa Kudrow. Ross, played by David Schwimmer. Chandler, played by Matthew Perry. And Joey, played by Matt LeBlanc. So let's cut to the very first scene of the very first episode. The very first scene of the entire show is right outside the iconic Central Perk. We see the Central Perk logo, which I didn't realize, and I think is pretty cool. So then we zoom inside and we see 5 of the characters sitting on the iconic orange sofa. We have Monica in the center. We've got Joey, Chandler, Ross, and Phoebe around her, and Monica is telling them about a guy from work who she is going to dinner with, but it's not a date, allegedly.
This is not even a date. It's just 2 people going out to dinner and not having sex.
Sounds like a date to me.
And the other 4 are poking and prodding, asking for more details. What's wrong with the guy if he's going out with you? You know, yada, 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 as friends do. Cut to a few scenes later. We are still in the coffee shop, and Ross makes his first appearance.
Hi.
He's very sad and distraught and aggressively upset because we learn that Carol is moving her stuff out of the apartment that day, which I don't recall if in the first episode we actually learn that Carol is his soon-to-be ex-wife, or if we just get the impression that they're together. I don't know if that's ever made clear, but he is married to Carol, so Carol's his soon-to-be ex-wife. Monica offers to get Ross a cup of coffee, so she stands up and Ross takes her place on the couch, and in one of my very favorite scenes of the very first episode, Phoebe begins cleansing Ross's aura.
Ooh.
No, don't. Stop cleansing my aura. Don't just leave my aura alone, okay?
I think it's interesting how throughout the first episode we catch glimpses of who the characters truly are. Phoebe kind of being the more alternative medicine hippie sort of character. Monica being kind of more of the motherly figure. Joey being the ladies' man. However, that bowl haircut really makes me question that. Chandler being the sarcastic, witty one of the bunch. And Ross being the divorcer.
It's not what you want to hear right now, but I can't help it. I love marriage.
Seriously? You divorceo?
If you have to call me a name, I prefer Ross the Divorcer. It's just cooler.
I am in the midst of editing and realized that I totally forgot to mention Rachel. Rachel's character is a little bit more complex than the others because in the very first episode we get the impression that she's the spoiled daddy's girl who's a little bit self-involved, and while she does maintain some of those qualities throughout the entirety of the show, her character I feel definitely grows the most. She becomes a very successful businesswoman who isn't afraid to go after what she wants. She is the fashionista of the group, she likes shopping, and she is definitely boy crazy. Anyway, Ross says he'll be fine and that he hopes she'll be happy. But then in the next breath he says,
No, I don't. To hell with her. She left me.
Joey then asks Ross,
And you never knew she was a lesbian.
which is the first time we learn that Carol is a lesbian, thus the reason for their separation, divorce. and is why she's moving out.
She didn't know. How should I know?
Joey, in Joey fashion, entices Ross's new singledom with strip joints, and Ross basically says that he isn't interested in being single, he just wants to be married again. And with that, Rachel, making her first appearance in the show, walks into Central Perk looking frazzled, confused, and she is dressed in a wedding dress and veil, and she is soaked head to toe from the rain, because it's raining.
I just want to be married again.
And I just want $1 million.
I know I said that I wasn't going to be talking about the makeup. We're here strictly to talk about Friends, but I just had to show you that I had to purchase the Friends and Makeup Revolution palette, just, you know, in spirit of the show. I've played with it a little bit, but this will be my first time, like, really going in full force, creating a look with this palette alone. I'm excited. So Monica rushes over to Rachel. This is evidently the first time that they've seen each other since, well, high school, I believe. And Rachel is incredibly excited to see Monica, tells her that she has been looking for her, how she had gone to her apartment, but a guy with a hammer told her that she would be here at Central Perk. And she is.
You are.
The waitress behind the counter then asks in a very high-pitched, slightly annoying voice,
Can I get you some coffee?
Can I get you some coffee?
and if you are a true Friends watcher, you'll have to let me know if you recognize this waitress. Does she look familiar to you? The waitress is Jasmine, who we will learn in later episodes is Phoebe's coworker at the massage parlor. You'll have to let me know if you spotted that. Monica then goes on to introduce Rachel to the rest of the gang. And then Rachel has a seat on the couch, and Monica asks her if she is going to cue them in on what happened or if they're waiting for 4 wet bridesmaids. And so Rachel begins telling them that it was a half hour before her wedding, to which she was going to be marrying a man named Barry. And she was staring at a luscious gravy boat, but she felt more attracted to this gravy boat than she did to Barry. Thus, realizing that she wasn't truly in love with her soon-to-be husband, she realized she had to get out of there. So she hightailed it out of there and went to find the only person she knew that lived in the city, Monica.
Who wasn't invited to the wedding?
Oh, I was kind of hoping that wouldn't be an issue.
Cut to the next scene. We are in Monica's apartment and we see Rachel still in her wedding gown, still soaked. She's on the phone with her father and basically, we assume, just told him what happened, is telling him that she can't marry Barry because she doesn't love him. We assume that her father says,
What does that matter?
because she says,
Well, it matters to me.
you know, obviously. Which I think just kind of portrays how Rachel's father is, sort of what her upbringing was like, that they probably care more about material things, having a nice house, nice car, a lot of money, as opposed to, you know, being in love and having a good relationship. And Rachel, I think, is suddenly realizing that she doesn't want that for herself, that she does want to be in love, that she does care more about having a good relationship and being happy. That is more important to her than having a nice house and having financial security. And she basically tries to explain this to her father using an iconic metaphor.
It's like all of my life, everyone has always told me, you're a shoe. You're a shoe, you're a shoe, you're a shoe. And then today I just stopped and I said, what if I don't want to be a shoe? What if I want to be a purse, you know, or a hat? No, I don't want you to buy me a hat. I'm saying that I am a hat. It's a metaphor, Daddy.
Which basically, she's telling him that she doesn't want to fit this mold that everyone is expecting of her and for her life to look like. That she wants to be free and discover who she is and to be on her own. And she wants to be happy, essentially. He assumably asks her where she'll go now, where she's going to stay, in which she says,
Well, maybe I'll just stay here with Monica.
Well, I guess we've established she's staying here with Monica.
and that she doesn't need her dad's money. In the next scene, Rachel is sitting on Monica's couch. Monica is sitting in front of her. Rachel is breathing heavily into a paper bag as she is realizing her new reality. No husband, no money from her dad. It's just her on her own. The gang is trying to console her.
Hey, look, this is probably for the best, you know? Independence, taking control of your life.
And hey, you need anything, You can always come to Joey. Me and Chandler live right across the hall, and he's away a lot.
Joey, stop hitting on her. It's her wedding day.
And then the doorbell rings, and we learn that Paul, Monica's date that's not a date, has arrived. Everyone is very, very excited. Oh, everyone is at the apartment right now. I don't know if I mentioned that. They're all very excited for Monica's date, and we learn that Paul is Paul the wine guy.
Paul the wine guy, Paul?
Which, if I recall, is never really made clear in the episode what that really means. Monica is a sous chef at a restaurant, and so I guess I'm assuming that Paul works at the restaurant and has something to do with wine, and that's how he gets the nickname Paul the Wine Guy. Though we don't really ever actually learn that for sure and learn why he's called Paul the Wine Guy. Do we? I don't think so. Anyway, she invites him upstairs, she opens the door and greets him, turns around to introduce him to all of her friends, and they're all sitting there.
Paul, this is... Everybody? Everybody, this is Paul.
Hey,
Paul, wine guy.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Paul, was it?
Paul enters the apartment and takes a seat on the couch, and Monica goes to get ready for her date. Next, Russ asks Rachel what she's up to tonight and invites her over to his new apartment where him, Chandler, and Joey are going to be assembling new furniture for him. Just invites her over in case she doesn't want to be alone, which I think is a real nice thing to do. She declines his offer because it's been a long day and she just kind of wants to hang low. Joey then turns to Phoebe and invites her over, and Phoebe declines and says,
Oh, I wish I could, but I don't want to.
which, can we just normalize that being an accepted response for why we don't want to do something? Can we? I just have to say I'm kind of having a hard time with this eyeshadow palette. The mattes are just, I don't know, it's like they're blending away, but we're gonna make it work. The next scene, we are in Ross's new empty apartment. We have Ross, Chandler, and Joey there, assembling what is clearly IKEA furniture.
I'm supposed to attach a brackety thing to the side things using a bunch of these little worm guys. I have no brackety thing, I see no worm guys whatsoever, and I cannot feel my legs.
Ross gets up and walks to the kitchen to grab a beer, walks back out to the living room, and is stricken with sadness because the only beer he had was Carol's favorite beer. Joey and Chandler then go to his side and ask him, Carol got the furniture, the stereo, and the good TV. What did you get? In which Ross pauses, then says,
You guys.
Oh, God.
You got screwed.
Oh, my God.
Chandler and Joey console him like this is a bad thing. However, I think it's quite touching and quite fitting for the show because as the pitch originally stated, how being single in the city, your friends become your family. And this just signifies the whole theme of the show, friendship. This is probably one of the hardest moments you'll ever go through in his entire life. As we'll learn, his first divorce.
Ross the divorcer.
Being alone in his brand new apartment, going about his brand new single life. He's gonna need friends there for support. I do need to point out the attire in this scene. Again, like I said, this entire first episode, I love how all the characters truly fit the narration of what their character's supposed to represent. And I especially love this scene, how each man of the show, their clothing in this scene is so unique to them, their personality. Joey with his super tight jeans and his fitted black t-shirt tucked into his jeans. Again with his bullet haircut, which doesn't really do it for me, but you know. Chandler with whatever he's wearing there, that button up and his hat. And Ross, just your typical clean cut guy with a button up shirt, t-shirt, and khakis. Next, we are on Monica's date. We are at a restaurant. Monica is sitting next to Paul and they are discussing Paul's most recent breakup, which again, I don't know that it ever clearly states whether or not it's his girlfriend or his wife, but basically he's telling Monica that she cheated on him and how he should have known because she was making frequent trips to the dentist. Monica relates to him and says that her brother is going through the same thing and asks him how he got over it, in which he suggests
You might try accidentally breaking something valuable of hers.
and then he admits that he had broke his ex's watch. We then cut back to Monica's apartment where we see Rachel. They're alone. She is on the phone talking to Barry and apologizing to him.
Barry, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you probably think this is all about what I said the other night about you making love with your socks on, but it isn't. It isn't. It's about me. And I did... Hi, machine cut me off again.
She then gets cut off and calls back, and we realize that she is actually just leaving him probably multiple voicemails. We then cut back to Ross's apartment with Chandler, Joey, and Ross. They are talking. Ross is still grieving, and he says, what if there is only one woman for everyone out there? And ladies' man Joey pops up from in the kitchen.
What are you talking about? One woman.
And goes on with this whole metaphor about ice cream, about all the different flavors.
That's like saying there's only one flavor of ice cream for you. Let me tell you something, Ross. There's lots of flavors out there. There's Rocky Road and cookie dough and bing, cherry vanilla.
Basically ends by telling Ross that you got married, so what? You're single now, grab a spoon.
This is the best thing that ever happened to you. Welcome back to the world. Grab a spoon.
So the episode is kind of doing a lot of jumping back and forth right now. We cut back to the restaurant on Monica's date with Paul the wine guy, and she is trying to egg something out of him, and he's kind of hesitant and admits that this revelation is more of a fifth date kind of thing, in which she is sort of touched and a little gushy, and she says,
Oh, so there's gonna be a fifth date?
and then he says,
Well, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there is.
and then prods him once more to tell her. And then he says that since the relationship with his ex ended, he hasn't been able to perform, you know, sexually. And then Monica asks him how long, to which he replies 2 years, and then asks Monica if she still thinks there's going to be a fifth date, to which she lovingly touches his arm and says,
Yeah, I do.
We then do one final jump back to Ross's apartment where he's still there with Chandler and Joey. They're sitting around just drinking beers, and Ross is talking about grabbing a spoon. And he says,
Grab a spoon. Do you know how long it's been since I've grabbed a spoon?
even if he were to get it together and work up the courage to ask a woman out, who would he ask? In which is followed by a cliche, cheesy montage with sad music where we cut back to Monica's apartment where we see Rachel sitting alone in the dark, kind of curled up, hugging herself. You know, obviously implying that Rachel should be that woman, giving us a glimpse into the soon-to-be iconic couple of the 90s, Ross and Rachel. So then we cut to the next, well, we're not quite sure if it's the next morning. I guess we kind of assume that it's the next morning, but we are in Monica's apartment, and Chandler and Joey are there sitting at her kitchen table, and Rachel is in a much better, more uplifted mood. She has made coffee for the very first time in her life and serves it to Chandler and Joey, in which Joey responds by saying,
While you're on a roll, if you feel like you gotta make like a Western omelet or something.
then takes a sip of his coffee and makes a grimacing face. And Joey and Chandler proceed to dump their coffee into the plant there sitting at the table.
Although actually, I'm really not that hungry this morning.
Which, poor plant. We then see Monica walk out of her bedroom, followed by Paul. Monica walks Paul to the door, while Joey, Chandler, and Rachel are still at the kitchen table and are slowly scooting the table towards the door so that they can hear what's going on. Monica basically says that she had a great time last night. We, very clearly get the impression that, things happened. Paul was able to perform. Monica kisses Paul goodbye and shuts the door with a gooey, lovey look in her eye, to which Joey responds by saying,
That wasn't a real date. What the hell do you do on a real date?
Chandler stands up and says that he's off to work. which if you're an avid Friends watcher, is the first of us learning that Chandler has a job, but never really tells us what his job is. Do we ever learn what Chandler's job is?
Oh, he's a trans monster!
Rachel then asks,
So, like, you guys all have jobs?
to which Monica responds,
Yeah, we all have jobs. See, that's how we buy stuff.
also one of my favorite all-time lines of the very first episode. We then learn that Joey is an actor.
Yeah, I'm an actor.
Wow.
Chandler and Joey leave Monica's apartment, and Monica and Rachel sit down at her kitchen table and are talking. Monica, being the motherly character that she is, asks Rachel how she's doing, how she slept, if she's talked to Barry, all while with this goofy grin on her face, and she says, "I can't stop smiling."
I can't stop smiling.
I mean, Monica is just giddy. She is smiling ear to ear. She just, you know the feeling. And then she says to Rachel,
You remember you and Tony DeMarco?
and Rachel goes, yeah. And she goes, well, it's like that, but with feelings. In which Rachel responds with pure joy and tells Monica that she is in big trouble. Which, side note, I think we all have a Tony DeMarco in our lives. We can kind of understand Monica's giddiness, her elation right now, right?
You look like you slept with a hanger in your mouth.
Monica then stands up and says that she's just gonna go to work and not think about him all day. And then in the next breath says, or she's just gonna go to work. Because obviously she's gonna be thinking about him all day. Rachel then says to wish her luck because she is going to go look for one of them job things. In which, I give her mega props because considering what she just went through, not just ending her relationship, but actually, walking out on her wedding and basically telling her father that she doesn't need his support anymore, being on her own for the very first time in her life. The fact that she is up with that go get 'em attitude, she's motivated, she's uplifted, she's in good spirits. I give her mega props, man. We are now at work with Monica, in which we are learning for the very first time that she is a chef. And in walks her coworker Franny, who we learn was on vacation in Florida. Monica asks her how Florida was, to which Franny responds by saying,
You had sex, didn't you? How did you do that?
and then Franny goes on to ask her who it was, and Monica tells her that it's Paul. And Franny goes,
Paul, the wine guy?
and Monica says, yeah, you know him? And Franny says,
Oh, yeah, I know Paul.
and Monica says, wait, you know him like I know him? Franny responds to Monica by saying that she takes credit for Paul.
Before me, there was no snapping his turtle for 2 years.
And in that moment, Monica learns that Paul the wine guy is not just Paul the wine guy, he is Paul the sleaze bag guy. The show then cuts to the next scene where we are at Central Perk again with the 5 of them. We have Monica, Phoebe, Chandler, Joey, and Ross all sitting around the orange sofa. And Monica assumedly just told them everything about Paul and how much of a sleazebag he is. The guys, of course, are astounded that Monica didn't realize that it was a line.
Of course it was a line.
Why? Why would anybody do something like that?
I assume we're looking for an answer more sophisticated than to get you into bed.
Monica is obviously crushed, heartbroken.
I just thought he was nice,
I can't believe you didn't know it was a line.
Rachel then walks into Central Perk carrying some shopping bags. She is in a great mood. She walks in and says,
Guess what?
and Ross asks,
You got a job?
and then she laughs and says, no, she's trained for nothing.
I was laughed out of 12 interviews today.
She says she found John and David boots on sale for 50% off and is why she is in such a great mood.
They're my new, I don't need a job, I don't need my parents, I've got great boots.
To which Monica then asks her how she paid for them. And Rachel says with a credit card. And Monica asks her who pays for the credit card.
My father.
We then cut to Monica's apartment where they're all sitting around the kitchen table. Rachel is sitting there holding a pair of scissors. All of her credit cards are sitting before her. And the gang is supporting her and urging her to cut them up.
Come on, you can't live off your parents your whole life.
I know that. That's why I was getting married.
So that she can truly be independent and live for herself. free of her parents. She continues to do so while her friends cheer her on. And when all is said and done, Monica gives her a big hug and says,
Welcome to the real world. It sucks. You're gonna love it.
which I really truly think is the ultimate relatable definition of adulting, is it not? Fast forward a little bit to later that evening. We are still in Monica's apartment. Monica, Ross, and Rachel are sitting in the living room watching TV. Their show ends and Monica says she's gonna go up to bed. Rachel then says to Monica,
Hey, Ron, look what I just found on the floor. What?
That's Paul's watch.
and Monica tells her just to put it back where she found it. And so Rachel does. Monica stands up to get up to go to bed, and as she passes the watch, she stomps on it hard, thus breaking it, coming full circle. Ironically, accidentally breaking something of value to him. Go, Monica. You had it coming. She then goes off to bed, leaving Rachel and Ross in the living room to chat. There is a plate of Oreo cookies sitting before them, what they were obviously snacking on while they were watching their show. They both reach for the cookie, but it was the last cookie, and so they decide to split it. Which, can I just add, side note here, I rewound this part a couple of times and I am pretty sure he gave her the part without the frosting. So he kept the part of the Oreo with the filling for himself, which, I don't know, man, kind of a dick move. I guess I was just a little bit disappointed in him, especially if he's going to be trying to woo Rachel, at least offer her the half with the filling, right? Okay, I stand corrected. In editing this video and going back and reviewing this scene, it does look like Rachel is holding the half of the Oreo cookie with the filling on it. However, I swear there are some parts where she's holding the cookie that doesn't have the filling, so I'm wondering if there was maybe like a camera filming error, shooting between scenes where she's shot sometimes holding the cookie without the filling, and then sometimes she's shot holding the cookie with the filling. I'm not really quite sure. But anyway, I just wanted to apologize. I take back what I said. I just wanted to let you know that I stand corrected. Ross then says to Rachel, I don't know if you know this, but I had a crush on you throughout high school. And she nods her head and says she knew. To which he replies,
I always figured you just thought I was Monica's geeky older brother.
and Rachel then says, I did. You know, it's very cutesy. Like, she obviously adores him for being Monica's older brother, but also, you know, just given this newfound relationship, they're both adults now, they're both just went through something really tough. She's just really sweet to him, and he's really sweet to her. Obviously, he still has, you know, a thing for her. Ross then asks,
But do you think it would be okay if I asked you out sometime, maybe?
she responds, yeah, maybe. And he says,
Okay. Okay, maybe I will.
Rachel then gets up and says she's gonna go off to bed, and she puts her cookie back, so she never even eats her half of the Oreo cookie, so Ross could have had a full cookie to himself. Maybe she put it back because it wasn't the half of the filling. Maybe. I need to point out in this scene Rachel's hair, or actually throughout the majority of this episode, her hair always catches my eye. It's just in its natural state. Like it's down, and it's like she's got this I just woke up like this kind of vibe going on. It's like wavy, curly. I think it's just beautiful. I mean, I know Rachel later on in the show, she has the iconic Rachel cut, but her hair in this episode always just catches my eye. I think it's just so pretty. Monica then walks out of her bedroom in her robe just as Ross is getting up and leaving. She asks Ross,
Wait. Hey, what's with you?
and he tells her that he just grabbed a spoon.
I just grabbed a spoon.
Which, you know, obviously she doesn't know what that means, but we do. He's moving on with his life. He found confidence and he feels like he's getting it together and he's ready to move on with his life. Pretty monumentous. We then cut to the very final scene. We are back at Central Park with the 5 of them sitting on the orange sofa. talking as friends do. Throughout this entire episode, and every episode of Friends really, there are multiple scenes where they're just hanging out. Whether they're watching TV or just having small talk that doesn't really have anything to do with like the main plot of the episode. But yet they're so important because it's like those little moments where you get to see the different characters' personalities, and you just see the bonding and the friendship that takes place. And a lot of times where you find the relatability to this group as a whole, as a group of friends, and also to the individual characters. So the final scene is one of them. One of them is telling a story, and then it cuts to a waitress walks up to the group and asks them if they would like a refill on their coffee, and then the camera zooms out a bit, and we then see that it's Rachel. And she has clearly gotten a job as a waitress, her very first job on her own. And Chandler asked her,
Did you make it, or are you just serving it?
because if you remember previously, her very first attempt at making coffee was an utter failure. She says that she's just serving it, and so they all hold up their cup and ask for a refill. And then the episode ends. As I said, I was only 5 when this show first aired, but I so wish that I was one of the viewers on the very first night when this show aired, and just to have that feeling of what it's like to watch this show, this episode for the very first time, not having any idea how iconic this show would become. I just wish that I could experience that, you know? If you are watching this and you were one of those very first viewers, like, were you hooked instantly? Like, did you get the feels from that very first episode of Friends? Because for me, at the point that I started watching Friends, when I was old enough, you know, to understand and to follow a TV show, you know, I only started watching it because my mom watched it. But, you know, even at the point when I started watching it, like, I already knew that Friends was like a big deal TV show. And I just would like to be one of the very first viewers before we ever even knew what Friends was going to become, you know? All right, that is the end of episode 1. I hope you guys enjoyed this very first episode of Makeup with Friends. I know I enjoyed filming it. If you did, please hit that subscribe button so you can come back for the next one. I will, of course, be doing season 1, episode 2, the one with the sonogram at the end. I haven't quite decided yet if I want to do it episode by episode, or if I sometimes want to chunk 1 or 2 episodes together. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down below. I would love to hear from you down below, your thoughts and opinions on this new series that I'm going to be doing, as well as on the show. What did you think of episode 1? What are some of your favorite parts, some of your favorite lines? We can have a whole Friends obsessed discussion down below. Thank you so much for your time today, and until next time, I hope you have a great day. The next scene, we are in Monica's apartment. The very first time in Monica's apartment. What the hell is going on? Oh, really? My neighbors have lived next door for a year now, and today they are choosing to hang their curtains. So they're drilling holes in their windows that are literally like 15 feet away. So, cool. I messed up. I don't think my wings are even. Is it that obvious?